Welcome to the video on Registered Education Savings Plans, RESPs for short, presented by PAPE Canada. So in this particular video, we're going to discuss RESP plans and their various attributes. Now, if you're looking for information on RESP withdrawals, we have a separate video for that, so you can go ahead and take a look at that. In this particular video, we're going to discuss opening the plan, how the plan works, basically until you get to the point of withdrawal. So the first thing is congratulations. If you're listening to this video, either you have a very interesting homework assignment or you're a new parent. So congratulations. It's time to get started on saving for your child's education. The first thing is who's involved in an RESP. Of course, there's the subscriber, which are typically the parents, sometimes the grandparents. You have the beneficiary or beneficiaries, plural, which is the child. And of course, you have the promoter or sponsor, which is the financial institution, often a bank or a trust company or maybe an insurance company. The first thing that we need to discuss is who's involved, who owns the account, and can you just transfer between different subscribers? Because a lot of the time, grandparents are very excited, they want to help out your son or your daughter, or son-in-law, daughter-in-law. They've had a new child, you're new grandparents, you want to help and make the first contribution. And so you may, as a grandparent, want to go and open the account and maybe make it joint with your son or your daughter or your in-law, and then eventually you'll kind of hand it over to them. Unfortunately, that's a very bad idea. Because the subscribers are the owners of the account, what ends up happening is that you cannot change the name of the subscriber on an RESP. It's like saying, let me take money out of an RSP for Jack, send it over there for Julian. That's not how it works. It belongs to one person, or if there are joint owners, those two people, and unless there's a death or I believe a divorce, you cannot change the name on the account, the subscriber. You'd have to withdraw the money, and then the parents would have to recontribute it. So if you're sitting there going, what's the best way for us to do this? As long as there's trust inside the family, the grandparents would give the money to the parents who would open the plan and make the contribution, okay? That's the easiest way to do it. Now, the whole point of an RESP is that every single year, you're able to make a contribution that attracts a government grant inside of the plan for your son or your daughter. There are two types of plans. You have family plans, which are by far the most popular, and you have specified plans, which are also called individual plans, and those are quite rare. They used to be more popular. What ends up happening, a specified individual plan, you can only have one beneficiary, or if you have a family plan, you can also have one beneficiary or more. So if you're a parent and you're like, well, we want to have 3 kids, we don't want to open it now, then have another and have to it's okay. You can open a family plan with one beneficiary, add more on later, okay? With a family plan, the money is more communal, so to speak, where when you, let's say you have 3 children and you say, well, let's give them a 33% allocation on the amount we put in. So if we put in $7,500, they each get $2,500. Well, what ends up happening if one of them decides, I'm going to go to a post-secondary education, but the other 2 don't? Well, that one child can use everything inside of that plan, so you can still benefit from the government grant and growth, even if the other 2 don't go. Had you opened 3 separate specified individual plans, that would not be the case. And so very few financial institutions are now offering the individual plans. So, when you put money in, what ends up happening? There's the $1 million question. How do we get free money from the government? In the year that a child is born, they do not have a birthday. They turn year 0 upon birth. There is no birthday. That counts as a year that they can contribute. They can contribute up until December 31st of the year that they're going to turn 17. Even in January of the next year, if they're still 17, they cannot make a contribution that attracts grant because they're going to turn 18 during that year. People say, but hold on, how do we get the 18 years of grant if we can only do it to age 17? Well, year 0, when they don't have a birthday, you're able to make a contribution. I believe it's only in South Korea that they count the year of maternity so that the child is a year old at birth. Here in Canada, that is not how it's done. If there's any other country that does it that way, please let me know. You can email me. But the year that they are born, they do not have a birthday, and so you can make a contribution. Of course, certain people will ask, well, what if they're born like December the 30th or something like that? There's no way we can, go from the hospital to the government to get a social insurance number, to go to the financial advisor, financial institution, open the plan, deposit the money, and get government grant in a day or two. That's correct. So in any one year, you are allowed to catch up for one previous year. We'll discuss that in a moment. Very quickly, when you have a newborn, there's obviously paperwork to fill out. They have to be provided a name, a birth certificate. It used to be, at least in my generation, if you were going to go and start working, then you needed to have a social insurance number. And people who I knew didn't get it till they were 16, 17, 18, or even 20 years old. Now the parents are doing that for the children right away because they need to get the social insurance number for the RESP plan. In many cases, this RESP plan is the first time that you're dealing with the government or that your child will deal with the government. So if there's any errors in the paperwork or the inputting or whatever it is, it's going to be found out right away. This is the time that it's going to get found out. It's the first time you go back and forth with the government. So if that happens, that's okay, because it's better to solve it right now sooner rather than later. So just in case that happens, there's no point in getting excited about it. It happens. So we know that contributions are not tax deductible, and we understand that there's going to be government grant. So the maximum government grant per year is $500 on contributions of $2,500. If we do the math, 20% of $2,500 is $500. This was the standard for many, many years. It used to be the maximum grant was $400 a year on $2,000 of contributions. So if you do the math, 18 years times $400 of contributions, it's $7,200 is the lifetime maximum grant. Even though some updates were made to RESPs, I think about 10 years ago, the lifetime maximum of $7,200 never changed. So if you're doing the math going 18 times $500, it doesn't add up. You're absolutely right. For whatever reason, they just kept the maximum at $7,200. So you can obtain that in fewer than 18 years. But of course, your money will still grow tax-free or tax-sheltered inside of the RSP. So if you have it, you want to keep making the contributions. Eventually what happened is that instead of saying it's just 20% for everybody on all contributions, the government said, okay, certain families that are lower income that are able to open the plan, it's more of a sacrifice for them to open it and to save this money. Also, they're earning a lower amount of income. We need to give them a little bit more. And so what happens is that in Canada, the marginal rates of tax, the federal marginal rates of tax, are updated every single year according to inflation. For 2022, the lowest marginal rate of tax is 15%. If you make up to $50,197. After that, it's 20.5% if you make $50,197 $198 to $100,392. And then, of course, there's 26%, 29%, and 33%. So, for the government grant, we're talking specifically about the grant, we'll talk about the bond in a moment. If you make less than the first marginal rate of tax, if your income is under that amount, then you will receive 40% on the first $500 contribution, and you will receive 20% on the amounts above $500. And so the whole point is saying your first $500, we're going to give you a higher amount. If you earn between $51,998 and $100,392, we're going to give you 30% on the first $500 plus 20% on the amount over $500. And that way, you're going to, depending on your income, you'll get a little bit more. If you earn more than $100,000, 392, well then you just get 20% times N, which is the amount that you deposit. Because at that point, you have enough money, or it's argued that you should have enough money with that and the 20% if you diligently save to send your children to school. You should not be worried about paying bills if you can earn $100,000 a year, is what the government is basically saying. So the lifetime maximums are $50,000 in contributions and $7,200 in grant. Now, for the government bond, okay, grant, it's important to note, the grant is an amount provided in a matching capacity for money you deposit, you being the subscriber. The Canada Learning Bond is different. Basically, the Canada Learning Bond is not based on contributions, it's based on how much money that you earn. The government of Canada has a website set up that explains if your income is under so much, this is what you're going to get. I think it goes all the way up to 16 children, because each child, your income, your threshold can go up, okay? I don't know anybody with 16 children, but you never know. So if you have 1 to 3 children and you earn income that is less than $50,197, then you are eligible for the Canada Learning Bond, or your children are eligible to receive it. What you do is this. The year that the child is born, there's no birthday, they can receive $500 if your adjusted family income is under the $50,197. After that, from ages 1 to 14, I believe, I'm sorry, 1 to 15, I apologize. From ages 1 to 15, you can get $100 per year. And that means the total is $2,000 of bond in total over your lifetime. That's the maximum. Of course, the adjusted family income goes up every year with inflation. It's $500 in the year that the child is born, and $100 per year every year after that for 15 years, so $1,500 plus $500, $2,000. Every year you have to qualify. It is not, okay, do I make above or below this much the year of birth? Every year they go and test it, you can apply for it, okay? And I'll put the link to the Government of Canada website with this information at the bottom of the page. So, we've covered all the main points except for one of them. And that's a very special rule called the 16 and 17-year-old rule. So, in the year that the beneficiary turns 16 and 17, can he or she receive grant? And remember, you're able to make contributions over 18 years, starting year 0, ending in the year that he or she turns 17 years old, because year 0 is year 1. The year they're born is year 1. The year they turn 1 is actually the second calendar year that they've been alive, all the way to age 17, which is the 18th calendar year they've been alive. So let's say you have a child who was born in 2018, you did nothing. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, you did nothing for all these years. Your child has been alive for 5 calendar years. They did not have a birthday the year they were born, but they're 4 years old. So you're behind on 5 years. So that year, when you put in the $2,500, because in 2023, now you go and you open the RESP account, you open that up, fantastic. You're sitting there going, I missed out on the grant for the last 5 years. Or maybe you're one of those very diligent, responsible parents. When my child was born December 27th, there was no way I could do it. And then they call the financial institution and they have an argument on the phone. It's not productive. It doesn't go anywhere. You can catch up, okay? So you open up the RESP, you put in $5,000 of contribution, and you get, let's say, the 20% on that because you earn $120,000 a year. You get $1,000, okay? So for the current year, plus you caught up for this year. The next year, 2024, you do the same thing. You put in $5,000, you get the full $1,000, you've caught up for this other year. And you can keep doing this up until the child turns 17. The end of the year, they turn 17. January 1st, the next year, it's too late. Of course, what happens is that parents oftentimes kind of wake up a bit later and they say, okay, we got to start thinking about university. This year you're turning 16 years old. Next year you're turning 17 years old. And so all of a sudden they start to be concerned. And now they want to open an RESP because they're going to have to pay for this. Eventually, we can kind of grin and bear putting money in this account for the next 2 years before you need it to get this government grant. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. In an effort to prevent parents who are really last minute and who are not paying attention, who don't save money, from all of a sudden right at the end, oh, well, let's put in $5,000, let's put in $5,000. The government said, okay, we're going to introduce the 16 and 17 year rule. To obtain grant from the government in the year that your child turns 16 and 17, which are years 17 and 18, calendar years 17 and 18 that they've been alive, one of 2 conditions must be met. Condition number 1, a total of $2,000 has been deposited and not withdrawn by the end of the calendar year that the beneficiary turns 15. So if this calendar year your child is going to be turning 15, you'd better go deposit $2,000 if you want to get government grant next year and the year after. If you don't have $2,000, because not everybody does, the government has said the other condition is that $100 must have been deposited and not withdrawn in each of the previous 4 calendar years ending when the beneficiary turns 15. So very quickly, let's kind of go back and say, well, what does that mean? Well, if the beneficiary turned 15, they have to put in $100 that year. 14, 13, 12, there's got to be $400 in the plan deposited and not withdrawn in each year for the 4 years leading up to the year the beneficiary turned 15. If you miss one of those years, you have to ask, have I put in $2,000 in total? If the answer is no, then you're not getting grant when your beneficiary is turning age 16 and age 17. The question is, have we met one of those two conditions? Of course, there are sometimes situations where parents have, 6 different children or whatever it is, and they may have one of them, who's 10 years old, another one is 20 years old, so you're putting money in for one, you're taking money out for the other. That is possible, it does happen. But it's, of course, quite rare that that happens, but of course it does. Not many people have 6 kids. On that, we've covered all of the most important facts about our RESP plans. And again, there is a separate video specifically on withdrawals. The last thing I can really say is that once you open the plan, it must be closed 35 years afterwards, unless one of your children or the beneficiaries qualifies for the disability tax credit, at which point they're granted another 5 years. It has to be closed within 40 years, but the standard is 35. Thank you again for listening to the video, and we'll speak to you again soon.